Hey everybody, this is BJ King with today's episode of the River Tree Review. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the differences between an occurrence form liability policy and a claims-made form liability policy. And so, in most commercial general liability policies that you see today, you're going to see an occurrence form policy. And if you had to choose between the two, you would want the occurrence form policy, just to start with, so you know. There are going to be seldom cases where you do see a claims-made form general liability policy. It's going to be usually in higher hazard type risks, such as manufacturing risks. Like, for instance, we have some customers that are medical device manufacturers. And so because of the high risk that's involved with that type of account and the changing marketplace and it just changes so much, most insurance carriers put those type of liability policies on a claims-made form. And then some other places that you would typically almost always see a claims-made liability form are going to be a lot of your professional coverages, things such as your directors and officers liability, your fiduciary liability, your employment practices liability, all those type of things. And so the differences between an occurrence form and a claims-made form, I mean, at the basis of it, it's in their names. So an occurrence form policy, you file a claim based on when the claim or when the incident actually occurred. Okay, so whenever the incident occurred. For a claims-made form, you actually file the claim based on when you found out about the claim and when you actually file it. So even though the claim may have happened 3 years ago, we're still filing it today. So let's go into some examples of what this actually means. And so let's say we have two manufacturers. One is manufacturing widgets, and they have an occurrence form general liability policy. And another manufacturer is manufacturing the medical devices that I was talking about. And so they have a claims-made form liability policy. Both of their policies are effective January 1st of 2019, and their annual policies, so they expire on January 1st of 2020. And so all through 2019, they're making their medical devices, they're making their widgets, and they're going along and they're going along. Next year, same thing. They get new policies, January 20 to January 21. The next year, January 21 to January 22, and they're all just rocking along, making their widgets, making their medical devices. And so we get to January, or let's say we get to February of 2022. And both of them have an incident that their product somehow harmed someone else or someone else's stuff. Okay, so the widget manufacturer calls their insurance broker and they say, hey, I had a claim. My widget hurt somebody and I need to do something about it. I need to take care of it. So the insurance carrier is going to go back and they're going to say, when did you actually make that widget? And they say, oh, I actually made that widget back in February of 2019. Okay, well, let's look at your policy. You have an occurrence form policy. So it actually occurred, which means you actually made that product back in February of 2019. So we're going to go back to 3 years ago and we're going to file a claim on that policy because that's when it occurred. Okay? Now the medical device manufacturer calls his broker and he says, hey, just letting you know something that just happened. We just hurt somebody else or hurt somebody else's stuff. And so the insurance carrier says, hey, okay, we'll take care of you. When did this happen? And so they say, oh, well, this happened back in February of 2019 when I actually made this medical device. However, we didn't make the claim until February of 2022. So which policy do I file it on? Well, you actually have to file it on your February of 20 or your January of 22 to January of 23 policy. And so the way that you're actually able to file that claim is because on that January of 22 policy, you have what's called a retroactive date on there. And that retroactive date is basically saying I can go back as far back as that retroactive date says. So I'm covering everything for our current policy to as far back as the retroactive date. And so we say, hey, Mr. Medical Device Manufacturer, let's look at your retroactive date. We go through the policy. Your retroactive date is January 1st of 2019. Therefore, you manufacture something in February of 2019, we're covering it on this brand new policy. So if you notice that makes the claims-made policy form a lot more complicated. You have to make sure and get your retroactive date way back to when you first started with the claims-made policy form. And if something happens, and let's say you go out of business, or you're able to switch over to an occurrence form, or there's different things that could happen. You sell to a competitor or to somebody else, you change names, whatever it is, and you have to cancel that policy, and you no longer are able to continue having your regular claims-made general liability policy. You still have to be able to file somehow if something were to happen, right? And so with that policy that would be ending, and let's say we're going back to the original date, that would be ending in January of 2020, and you still need to be able to file a claim, but you don't need any insurance going forward. We're going to have to put what's called an extended reporting period on there, or some people just like to call it a tail. And so what that tail does is that says, hey, I'm going to give you 1 year, 3 years, 5 years from now, whatever it is, to make the claim for anything going back to that policy period. So obviously the occurrence form versus the claims-made form is a very intricate, detailed subject with a lot of things. There's actually a lot more that goes into it as well. I tried to break it down here on this video as much as I could, but there's a lot more involved with it. If you would like to have a discussion with me or someone in the office about this, please give us a call, hit us up on social media, shoot us an email, just whatever is the easiest way for you to contact us about this or even any of the other subjects that we cover on the River Tree Review. But until then, we'll have another one. Have a good one.